On July 3rd, 2023, at 11:45, that's the exact moment where, after a 4-year-long hiatus of not using any big tech services, my privacy finally died. In this eulogy, I'll tell you what led to the decisions I made, what I gained and what I lost from making them. I'll sometimes tell you what tools I used, though I have to be brief because otherwise you'll come up here and kick me off the stage. And I'll tell you why I finally killed my privacy myself. Now, to illustrate why this might be important, privacy, let's have a look at my speaker profile, and you can see these pictures down here below. I did not submit those pictures. The first one, I was aware of it being taken, though I cannot remember when or where it was taken. The second one, I was clearly not aware that it was being taken, but the AI found me anyway. And the last one isn't me. Now, I know for sure, because I don't have such nice shoes or such a good hairline. So it's getting worse. And by that I mean privacy, not the hairline. But, well, the hairline too, but anyway. Now, for you to better follow what I'm saying, I structured this talk into 4 stages. And to visualize this, I created what I call the privacy iceberg. We'll start at the surface and then we'll descend down into the depths. And for the Zoomers among you who have never seen an iceberg, just imagine it as a tier list. As reasonable people, we start counting at 0, of course. And we start at level 0, which I called the basic bit. But legal told me that it's inappropriate, so instead I called it the average Andy. About 95% of people are average Andys, and about 99% of tech people. That's because tech hipsters care more about cool tech than they care about privacy. And that describes me pretty well, actually, in around 2017, which was a truly different time. Trump was just sworn in, the Middle East was a mess, cryptocurrencies were being pumped left and right. But back then, when you were talking about AI, you're more likely to be a nerd ranting about video games than a Fortune 500 CEO trying to get his water bottle company on the AI hype train. At the time, at that better time, honestly, I was a junior software engineer, so I had an Android because I wanted the freedom to run any software on my device. Also, my own, this is for sure going to be the next TikTok apps that never made it to production. I also had a smartwatch. Not a cool one, a really dumb one. It looked and acted like a regular analog watch, but it also had a notification LED that would distract you whenever you got a message. Now, you couldn't read the message, it was just a watch. It would just beep and blink, so it was basically a pager. But then again, these are blowing up recently, so maybe they'll make a comeback. I, of course, use Windows, because I wanted to play video games. But I also use Google Docs, because nobody really liked Microsoft back then. Not that that's any different now. I also had an Amazon Alexa, which was nice as a nerd for once to talk to a girl. And you could even tell her what to do. And I have to warn you, you can't do that with real girls. That's what I'm told. I was on Snapchat, because I wanted to talk to real girls eventually. And I was on Twitter, because back then it was a respectable brand. What are you doing here, Elon? You didn't run it back then, so get out of here. I was also not on Facebook, because I'm not a million years old. But I was on WhatsApp. And that wasn't really an issue. Because back then, they even they belonged already to Facebook, but they didn't share a lot of data with Facebook. And I'm sure that won't change or become an issue ever. I was on LinkedIn and Instagram though, so Zuck was happy after all. And I had mostly public profiles. Truth is, I just didn't think that I had anything to hide, right? Well, this changed when I saw two movies. One was 0 Days, a great movie, a documentary about Stuxnet virus, which was presumably created by the US and Israeli intelligence agencies, and Snowden, a film about Edward Snowden. In particular, there's a scene where the NSA accesses all the social network data and even the live cameras of a girl and use that as pressure points against her father. Now, I'm not sure, do I have an F-bomb? One? Okay, I might use that later. That was very freaking creepy. And it sensitized me that privacy is an issue. So I no longer believed that I had nothing to hide. Now, you'd think that watching these movies would throw me directly into level 3, but I am a slow learner, so instead I reached level 1, which I called the skeptical socialite. The first thing I did, I installed a password manager, which is really the easiest thing you can do to keep cyber criminals away. I switched from Google to DuckDuckGo, and I declined most data sharing policies and disabled trackers wherever I found them. I also turned my social media private, for a starter, and I became more thoughtful of what I shared and did online. Then, however, a cataclysmic event happened. I got a girlfriend. Yeah. You might say this is very random, and it is, but it will matter later down the line, I promise you. What also changed, however, was WhatsApp's privacy policy. Now I never trusted them ever since they were bought by Facebook, but now they loosened the rules. They had access to more data, in particularly metadata. And this really matters. Message length, where you're texting from, when you're texting, and who you're texting with can tell a lot about you. And to illustrate why this is important, I created a small animation with these 3 protagonists, and I hope you won't be able to decipher the messages, but I'm sure you'll be able to tell who Alice is more interested in. Let's have a look. Since I was in a committed relationship at the time, I had a good reason to keep my communications private, and thus I decided to delete WhatsApp. And by doing that, I reached level 2, which I called the cautious communicator. Now, I needed an alternative, of course, to WhatsApp, so I switched to Threema and Signal. And apparently the US National Security Advisors did that too. This is a headline from yesterday. And let's just say my expectations for the administrations were low, but holy fuck. Yeah. I also switched from Gmail to ProtonMail. And since at the time it came in a bundle, I also used Proton's VPN service, which is a great moment to talk about today's sponsor, EastVPN. If you're browsing the internet without a VPN, you're leaving your personal data vulnerable to hackers, advertisers, and even your internet provider. That's where EastVPN comes in. With EastVPN, your internet traffic is securely stored only on our servers, such that, I'm just kidding. VPN services can be beneficiary, especially in less liberal countries, or maybe in a public Wi-Fi like this one, or when you're trying to watch US Netflix. But they don't anonymize you on the internet. That's just a marketing scam. Now, having said that, what did I gain from doing this? Well, Zuck and Sundar could no longer read my messages. Right? Well, I still used Android with Google services, and I still use Google Docs and Windows, so these two were still happy. I wasn't, though, sometimes. You see, most of my friends switched with me to Signal, but they still used WhatsApp to communicate with each other. And as it turns out, nowadays, when you're organizing a party or gathering, you create a WhatsApp group chat and you scroll through your phone and invite whoever shows up on the list. But if you don't show up on the list, you won't get invited. So our party started to look from this more to like this. Turns out social networks are really only strong if they are, well, networks. Then, however, everything got much worse, or better depending on the POV. I got recruited into some government cybersecurity stuff, and I can't go into detail, otherwise I have to kill you probably. Let's just say I've seen some things, and not wanting to become the victim of my own tactics, I reached level 3, the peak of the privacy iceberg. Or the root, I guess. I'm not really sure how icebergs work. I became a paranoid privatist. And yes, not even ChatGPT could come up with a better alliteration. I switched to Linux from Windows. So, sorry, Satya, no more AI training with my data. I de-Googled my Android completely. I replaced Google services with open source alternatives. I built my own cloud infrastructure and with a NAS and a server, which basically replaced Google Cloud. So, sorry Sundar, no more AI training with my data. I hosted all stuff up there, documents, pictures, contacts, and most importantly, notes. Because you have to understand I'm very stupid, so I forget everything I don't write down, and that includes my thoughts. So, with the whole free speech debate nowadays, one thing is clear to me. My thoughts should be my own. I want to keep them to myself and not share them with anyone, not even cloud providers. And then I want to choose what I reveal myself. Now, having done that, what did I gain from doing this? Well, I was basically immune to corporate espionage. By that I mean from corporations. Regular espionage, though, honestly, not so much. This isn't per se bad. Corporations have a lot more interest in exploiting you personally than the NSA or the FSB does. Corporations benefit from selling you data and exploiting you as an individual. And honestly, if Mossad wants a tracker on you, because you're a person of interest, they get a tracker on you. Whether it's digital, physical, or a spy like in a James Bond movie, you can't stop them. And live somewhat normally. Doing this had also some drawbacks though. As you all know, using Linux is always either a one-liner or 10 hours of debugging. And I know some people like that, some people don't. I don't do kink shaming, you do you guys. Google service alternatives, the open source ones, sometimes just didn't work. For example, I didn't have Wi-Fi proximity data, I only had the physical GPS signal on my phone, so sometimes I couldn't get an exact location. And when I was in New York and tried to order an Uber, I couldn't get a location, so I had to use a taxi instead. Ugh. I also had to maintain the entire IT infrastructure that I had built myself. I was the entire IT department. Security, operations, admin, support. It was a lot of work. Now, you might say we are 15 or more like 18 minutes into the talk, and my privacy is as strong as it has ever been. We've made all the CEOs sad. They even assemble like the Avengers, look at them. Or I guess maybe like the Sinister Six. The Ferocious Four? Okay, I'll stop. what will finally kill it? And for that, we need a catastrophic fourth event. I became single again. And as if dating for a 20-ish year old average looking male nerd working in IT wasn't hard enough, try doing it without WhatsApp or any social media. So after a few months of trying my best, I had to take my privacy principles out back and and by doing that, I reached the fourth level. Index out of bounds. Oh shoot, yeah, right. I said 4 levels, 0, 1, 2, 3, right? Yeah, well, you guys know off by 1 errors. Yeah, turns out I am now back on WhatsApp. And I'm back on some social media. I use the easy wins without the big trade-offs. I'm not an average Andy. I'm maybe like an aware Andy. I still use my NAS. I still use DuckDuckGo. I still cover my webcams whenever I don't use them. I still have my de-Googled Android device. But honestly, if it fails, I might switch to an iPhone. You have to understand, I think technical privacy for everyday people is dead. It died in 2007 with thunderous applause when Steve Jobs introduced the iPhone, and with it the most sophisticated and successful spy device in human history. But the thing is, practical privacy isn't dead. We have it whenever we don't bring our phones. Whenever we talk to a person instead of texting or calling them, whenever we make memories instead of taking pictures, whenever we discuss things live instead of ranting about them on Twitter, whenever we actually listen what a friend has to say instead of liking their depressive Instagram post. For that kind of privacy, there's no price that we pay, but a prize we attain. And with that, thank you.